Will we see her representing herself this morning? The judge told her at her last hearing that she would be able to do so. Now, that last hearing was in December, if you remember, and we got to hear her doing that colloquy with the court and explaining the reasons to the judge why she wanted to act as her own attorney. Take a listen.
Can you just tell me a little bit why you want to represent yourself?
Yes, Your Honor, for the past 5 years that I've been incarcerated, I have taken upon myself to study case law and criminal rules of procedure in the state of Idaho and Arizona, as well as federally. Prior to that, for the last 10 years, prior to my incarceration, I did study procedure in family law, and I have real trial experience. I have participated in 3 different full trials from beginning to end.
Vallow Daybell faces charges of conspiracy to commit murder in the case of the death of Charles Vallow, her 4th husband, and the man she is alleged to have conspired with is her deceased brother, Alex Cox. Now, Vallow Daybell is serving a life sentence already in Idaho for 3 murders: the murders of her 2 youngest children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, and the murder of her 5th husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell. Her trial in Arizona is set to start March 31st. There's also an attempted murder charge on there for her former nephew, Brandon Boudreaux. Thankfully, he survived that attempt, and he's no longer married to her niece, Melanie. I have 2 great guests standing by to talk about this. One of them is related to Lori Vallow. I want to welcome him in on the show right now. We have Rex Connor, Lori's uncle, also co-hosts the podcast Silver Linings, which does tremendous advocacy work in the name of remembering JJ and Tylee. And also want to welcome on criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor David Bruno. Good morning to you both. Rex, let me start with you, please. What do you think of Lori representing herself?
I wish she would declare herself guilty and not drag everyone in her life through this. So I don't think very highly of it. We'd just like it all behind us. We'd like her to get as much justice as she can in this life and be through it.
Right. You know, this raises a great question. I was thinking last night, and you've been so open, Rex. We appreciate you so much. Our audience appreciates you and all the work you've done for JJ and Tylee and justice for them in this case, and also Charles and Brandon, everybody, Tammy Daybell. I was thinking last night about how with Lori seeming sometimes to be at peace with what she's done. And I mean, the things she said, for instance, at her sentencing, and I've got a clip. I want to play this now. This is where she's talking about communications she receives from the spirit world. She almost seems at peace with everything and the people who are deceased. I'm wondering why not consider taking a plea? Let's take a listen to some of what she told the court at her sentencing.
I have had many communications with Jesus Christ, the Savior of this world, and our heavenly parents. I have had many angelic visitors have come and communicated with me and even manifested themselves to me. Because of these communications, I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world. Because of my communications with my friend Tammy Daybell, I know that she is also very happy and extremely busy.
Makes you wonder if she would say that Charles is happy and busy too. Rex, what do you think of this? If she seems so comfortable and at peace with it, does it boggle your mind as well that she doesn't want to wrap this up, as you said, and not torture everybody with a trial?
No, I was just saying what I wish. I have adopted the belief of one of my daughters, who's probably closest to her. She was her nanny for a while, and she said, "Dad, I have such low expectations of Lori because, as Lori's brother points out, he's my co-host on the podcast, he said, you're dealing with someone who's mentally ill. And so you can't expect rational thoughts coming out of someone that's mentally ill. She's guilty, she's evil, and that mental illness on top of it just makes it unpredictable what's going to come out. So I don't have much of an expectation. Yes, I wish things were a certain way, but I have no control over that. So we just have to take it as it is. And unfortunately, she's chosen to drag Colby, Kay, and Larry, the rest of Charles' family, and all of us, frankly, through all of this.
Right. You're all such wonderful people, wonderful families, and you all don't deserve this. It's awful. It's you're being re-victimized, going through it again and again. I want to turn to you for some legal questions, please, Attorney David Bruno. So I have a clip where the judge is questioning Lori at the last hearing about whether she can handle this. I mean, obviously, as you know, we're talking about cases as serious as they get in criminal court, a homicide and an attempted homicide. Let's take a listen together to her answers.
You understand that if you represent yourself, you'll have the sole responsibility for, among other things, asserting legal defenses, interviewing witnesses, doing investigation, doing legal research, filing and arguing motions, examining and cross-examining witnesses, giving an opening statement and a final argument to the jury. Do you understand all that?
Yes, Your Honor, and I'm very prepared.
David Bruno, it's not easy to do what you do. Do you think she's in over her head?
No, absolutely. I mean, there's an old adage, he who represents themselves has a fool for a client.
Yep.
And that's the baseline. That's not even bringing into the conversation the competency issues that Lori Vallow has. I mean, we are just getting reports that, you know, she could understand the proceedings, and that competency question is such a low standard. It's low. Do you understand who's in the courtroom, what the roles are? Not can you object to a hearsay rule and whether or not a hearsay exception applies, and the admissibility and foundation and authenticity and all of the rules of evidence that are required to admit evidence and also object to evidence. So yeah, that's why the adage is what it is, because I mean, just because you sat through prior trials where you're a defendant and you've been convicted of murdering your 2 children and sentenced to life in prison doesn't give you the experience to step up and do it yourself. So yeah,
Exactly.
it's not going to end well for Lori, for sure.
No, you're exactly right, David. And David, let me throw out a scenario. I get a lot of questions about this. I'm sure you do too, depending on the case or the circumstances. So here, Lori has a right to testify, as we know, and she's representing herself. Would you kind of walk us through how that may go if she makes that choice?
Yeah, so we've seen it done different ways. I mean, let's not forget, just recently, we've seen a defendant get up there, even with an attorney, and testify for as a narrative. So it's really going to be up to the judge, because the judge has the ability to manage the admission of evidence in the procedure. And every case, every state, every judge, county, municipality really do it differently when there's a pro se defendant. So it's going to be up to this judge, but she's got the right to cross-examine. So the prosecutor goes first. Prosecutor puts up their witness, and then Lori Vallow will have the opportunity to cross-examine that witness, lodge those objections. And then once the prosecutor puts all their evidence and all of their witnesses on, then Lori would be responsible for calling her witnesses if she has any. And then if she calls herself, it's going to probably be narrative. The judge will allow her to testify in the narrative like we've seen a little before in the last couple of years.
Right, David. Robert Tellis, I think, was our most recent example of that narrative, right? And that was for other. He had counsel, but that we won't get into. I don't have time. But Rex Connor, before we have to say goodbye to you for now, will you be going to this trial? I'm curious what your plans are. Plans for any family members, as it's fast approaching, as we know, end of March.
I talked with my daughters recently, and when they go, if I'm not imposing, I want to go with them, and they are planning on going and participating. They all feel like they were close to her, various times in life, and are interested in this. Of course, it's an emotional burden, and I'd like to be there. We had such a good experience together, the connection together going to her trials before. So yes, I'll be there when other family members are there and want someone else with them.
That's awesome. There's definitely strength in numbers. You all are so strong, and can't thank you enough for being so open about everything you're going through emotionally, with this case. My friends at home, check out the Silver Linings podcast in memory of JJ and Tylee. Rex Connor, thank you so much for coming on this morning. We'll see you soon.